everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of the Blues News podcast. On today's episode, I'm here with Joe from the Southend page 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏. Firstly, Joe, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
That's all right. Yeah, I'm not bad. For everyone who doesn't know, I was just telling Joe that I've just got back from Dublin, so literally about half an hour ago. So straight in the door and straight back on the podcast. So let's get into it. So, firstly, Joe, if you could just tell us a bit about your background and how you came to love Southend, and also a bit about what you do, that would be great.
Yeah, I've been a Southend fan for as long as I can remember. I think I had a season ticket for probably, over sort of 15 years. I think, in terms of what I do on social media, I've got my 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗏𝗺 account, which I'm on Twitter more than anything. 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗺𝗏 as well, but so on that I basically look at Southend, but also the National League as a whole. I've started to look at this season, just looking at tactics, stats, kind of that analysis, everything that comes under that, really, a bit of scouting, that kind of stuff, and just posting that online. Got a fair few followers on there. People seem to kind of like it, so
yep.
I think I'll just carry on with it, really.
Of course we like it. That's why I had you on, because I think it's really interesting. You definitely know your stuff. That there's no question. So I hope to put some of your knowledge to the test today as well about National League. So we'll see. But have you had any favourite players over the years?
What, just for Southend?
Yeah, just for Southend.
Yeah.
Or I guess in general as well, if you want to.
Yeah, no, I think with Southend, you look at people like Adam Barrett. That's probably one of my favourite. Obviously, 𝗦𝗵𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗧𝗏. I think 𝗦𝗛𝗥𝗜𝗏𝗏𝗏, when I first started going, 𝗦𝗛𝗥𝗏𝗏𝗏 was probably my favourite player in that first couple of years that I started going. Obviously Freddie Eastwood, like people like that. So that'd be a good question, to be fair. Building an all-time Southend team, there's been a fair few good players.
Do you want to give it a go? Some names that you'd put in there?
All of them would be in there. I think you'd probably have like 𝗦𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 in goal. Who else? Someone like maybe Adam McCormack, someone like him. I don't know. I think all of the players I'd pick would be probably going back from when I first started going. I think it's difficult to pick players who are more recent. I think the players of the past are more. It's easier to look at them and have them in all-time teams. So I think everyone would, if anyone was picking their all-time team, it'd go back, years gone by. Not saying anything about the current team, but just because I think older players are always looked on more favourably. I think when players leave. So no, there's been a few good players, to be fair, like throughout the years.
Well, obviously it's at a different level now, and most of the players that you're mentioning would have played in League One, Championship, League Two. But obviously now we're playing in National League, so a bit of a step down, but it's a decent level. Do you think there are any players that in the team now that would get in your all-time 11? Maybe if we're playing at a different level, or maybe as they are now.
I don't know about all-time, because, like you say, it's difficult to compare the divisions. I've watched Southend in sort of being a fairly top League One size, and then obviously you look where we are now, a couple of divisions lower. It's difficult to compare, really. I think a lot of our players probably could play League Two, to be fair. And I think that as time goes on, I think the standard of National League has got better. So maybe if you're comparing National League now to maybe League Two of a few years ago, it's probably the same. So it's quite difficult to compare the leagues, really. I think as time goes on over such a long time frame as well. But no, I think there's some top players there, to be fair.
Do you think the likes of maybe Gus? Do you think Gus would be near there in the right back spot?
Gus would have to be up. He's got to be up there. He's a good player, and he's so enjoyable to watch as well. I think everyone loves him. He's just always got a smile on his face, isn't he? He's just
So You can tell he loves the fans as well. Like whenever something happens, he always comes over to block those. He's just, fist pumping everything. And I think, I don't know if you saw, but the club put out a thing where you could buy like a signed sort of poster or something of the players.
Yeah.
I saw it within 5 minutes. So I got to get Gus's. So I instantly bought Gus's because he's definitely actually somebody I'd love to have on the podcast. So I don't know if he would, but that'd be a cool one. But
yeah, definitely.
Going back to your obviously your Twitter page and blog and everything, what made you want to start that?
I think so. When I started it, it was more, I was just into like the stats part of it more than anything. So I think that's probably why it was called the account Shrimp and Stats, right? And then I think as I've learned more about just tactics and just the game in general, then it's widened what I write about. So now it's not, obviously I still use stats and data, but it's more, I'm using that less, I'm using that to help back up what I see more. So like when I analyze games, I look at tactics more, and it won't be data driven. It will just be using stats to back up sort of what I've seen. So there's been a bit of a shift in the content that I've been putting out there. But yeah, I think when I first started it, like I say, I was more interested in the stats part, and I didn't see anyone else doing that for Southend. There's other people looking at different clubs and different leagues. So there's a lot of people there that I thought, I can sort of learn a bit. And there was no one doing it for Southend, so I thought I'd have a crack and see what happens. And yeah it seems to be going okay. So
yeah, well, definitely. There's definitely, like, you're right, there's definitely a niche in the market for that sort of thing, because you see a lot of other sort of stats pages for other accounts. I've had one of them on Christian James from Boston United Stats. There's a lot of sort of stats pages and things, but there's not many for Southend. So again, that's one of the reasons I really wanted you on, because it's just something really interesting. And I guess a question I want to ask, which I don't really know how to ask it, but in simple terms, just how do you do it? How do you get these stats, and how do you, analyze it in the level that you do?
The stats, I've got a Wire Scout subscription, which you got to pay a bit of money for that, to be fair. But and then when I analyze games, you just got to. I read a lot. I read a lot of other people's analysis and really want to improve myself. I think that's the first step, like not thinking that you know everything, always being open-minded and looking at how you can improve all the time. So when I look at games now, I'll break it down into phases. If you're looking at how a team builds up from defense, or do they just smash it long from defense, what formation do they play? How does the formation change if they're in defence or in the middle or in attack? What movements are there? Do the fullbacks, when you attack, do the fullbacks get forwards, like with Gus, like we're saying, or do the fullbacks stay back? Like, there's loads of different things, but I think I normally break it down by phase. I look at in possession and then out of possession as two different things. So I sort of have a few, when I'm analysing the game, I'll have notes with me and I'll put headings, breaking it down into each phase, and I'll just make a little note under each heading, but only if there's like a pattern. You can't analyse every single action in the whole game because it's too long. No. There's too much can happen. But if you're looking at, for example, if a team has a goal kick, for example, do they play out from a goal kick or do they just go long? They're going to get a few goal kicks every game, so that's a pattern. Yeah. So they always go long from goal kicks, and that's something you write down. Yeah. If they always try and play out, so there's certain things like that, but it's impossible to analyze everything. It's just too much. So I normally just break it down into key things, make a few notes, and then what I like to do is, if I'm doing a post-match analysis, I look at one or two things that have won the team that match. So, like, depending on the score is and what happens in the game, how a goal was scored. I look at certain things that have actually been useful, rather than just analysing pointless things, looking at what actually won the team the game. And I think people find that fairly interesting as well. So that's normally what I stick to when I write about a post-match. But I think just breaking it down into different phases, really, and just, like I say, just reading a lot of other people's stuff just to learn. Like, I'm always trying to learn and improve myself, really. But it's hard work. Like, it takes time.
Yeah. So you said about some patterns there. What sort of patterns have you noticed in Southend's previous starts of the season? Because I've seen a lot of people on social media and obviously in person just not very happy with our start. And I understand it. It's not been the greatest of starts. But what do you think are some sort of patterns you've noticed from Southend's starts of the season?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been the best start, but I think you've got to look at it's so early on that you've got to look at who you've played as well. So maybe what are we 5 games in, 6 games in?
6.
So like maybe a team who are top of the league have had 6 really easy games, and then maybe we've had 6 really hard games. I think we've probably had some of the teams we've played, I think, have been good teams. Like we played York first game, who I think will be up there. Hartlepool are difficult to play against. So there's been maybe 1 or 2 maybe easier ones as well, but there's been some difficult games. And I think the next few games as well are looking quite difficult. So I think when it's early in the season, you don't want to read too much into the league table yet, because you never know. And with our pre-season, there's a bit of disruption there, and we still need a few signings and everything. So it's going to take a bit of time. But I think when you're looking at tactics, one of the things I've noticed in just a couple of games is we haven't been maybe not the most aggressive off the ball. So like in the York game, for example, the first match of the season, they had a lot of possession that game.
Yeah.
And we was the home team, and okay, they want the ball, they're a possession-based team, so you can't expect to dominate the game. But I think we just allowed them a bit too much time on the ball, and I think that's come from how we tried to press them. I think so. There's a few little things like that I've identified that just could be improved on. But it's one thing saying it could be improved on, and another thing actually saying how to improve it, right? So it's a difficult one. But I think we just need to give it a bit more time and just to really assess how the start's been. I think once we've got to sort of 10 games or so, got maybe 2 or 3 more players in, we've got a few injuries as well, which doesn't help. So yeah, we have to see, really. But it hasn't been the best start. We all know that. But it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish, right?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I spoke about it on one of my previous podcasts with Jack Connor, a Forward fan, and I was saying, like, I understand the frustrations, but as you said, it's a long season, and I think we've got time to turn it around. And I think, we've not been under the best circumstances. I know the takeover's gone through, and it should be. I think some fans are expecting a takeover means, overnight we're suddenly going to become one of the top teams in the league. And, last season, without the points deduction, I think we would have finished, I think it was it 4th or something like that, definitely in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It was definitely right up there. And it's like, with this team, you never know what to expect. So I'm seeing some people saying, they're not a good group of players, but they've been proven wrong season after season, and really it's the same core that we've had for the past few seasons. So yeah, I definitely think I'm definitely on your side with that we shouldn't start panicking yet. Maybe after 10 games or something, but even then, personally, maybe this is just because I'm used to all of the rubbish that we've been through over the past few years, but well, longer than that. But I'm just, I don't know, if we don't get playoffs this season, I don't see that as a disaster. I think it'd be a shame, but I don't see it as a disaster. And I think Justin Rees has said quite a lot about it, because he's made it very clear that, playoffs would be great this season, but if we don't, get promotion or something, it's not the end of the world, and that's not the plan. And I think, the plan should just be sustainability off the pitch, which is something that we haven't had in so long, and building from there. So yeah, I definitely agree with you saying about, it's a long season. We're only 6 games in, and obviously it's a big one next against Oldham, which I'll be going to. So that'll be a good game. But another thing that I saw on Twitter, I can't remember. I think it was maybe a few weeks or a month ago or something like that. I saw Southend were advertising a job. We're working with the club about stats and things. Obviously, I'm not saying, I'm not asking you if you'd leave your job or whatever. But would you ever consider working with the club if you got the chance to? Is that something you thought about before?
It's a bit of an on the spot one. That
it's a bit on the spot. You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
Yeah, look, obviously, it's difficult with. I haven't had much experience in that that proper field of working in a club, so I don't know. We'll see what happens in the future at some point. But yeah, at the minute, it's probably not the right time. But we'll see. I don't know.
I thought I'd ask that because I saw so many people tweeting and mentioning your name in the comments, saying this is the job for you. I thought, why not ask the man himself if if it is the job for him. But so we spoke about it already, really, but sort of talk about the clubbers at the moment. So what do you think are our biggest weaknesses and strengths as a team?
I think the biggest strength has got to be like that resilience, that they've shown like the last year or so. There's no other team in the league who's been through what we've been through. Like all them players, all that uncertainty that they've gone through. So, like I think even last week, like the Dagenham game, was it, where we sort of equalised or whatever right at the end. Things like that where like they just never give up, and that strength of just going right to the last whistle, that's always going to be in your favour. So that's got to be right up there. I think with how we play, like tactically, I think that sets us up to be competitive. I think like certain people maybe don't like how we play. Maybe we're too cautious on the ball sometimes, but you need to have the ball. You need to control games, but you need to have possessions in order to control games. So sometimes where people want us to just go forwards all the time, like of course you need that, of course, because you want to score. But if there's too much of it, then you can also lose the ball more. If you lose the ball more, then you've got more defending to do. So it's just a balance between, it sounds weird, but almost attacking too much and too often, like too quickly. Sometimes you've got to just slow it down and just hold the ball for a little bit. So we do that fairly well. Maybe we get the balance wrong sometimes. Maybe we're not quick enough. But I think overall, like how we set up makes us competitive. Like it's not perfect, but it puts us in a good position. And if you've got good players as well, like we do, like you're not going to be far wrong. Like obviously we're so strong out of possession. Like defensively, we've got like probably the best defence in the league. I think the last 2 seasons, so that will probably be up there again this year. Yep. I think last season, like you say, we would have been in the playoffs if all the other nonsense didn't go on. The thing that was probably lacking was a bit more composure in front of goal. So I think last season we created a lot of chances. We scored an okay amount of goals. We scored 70 goals last year, so that's all right. But if you want to be top 3 or whatever, you need to be scoring more goals. Now we created a lot of chances last year, but we need to be more clinical. So I think that's probably the area to improve on this season. I think signing Josh Walker, I don't know if he was going to talk about signings later on, but signing Josh Walker, I think will help, but he's been injured. Obviously now with Cardwell leaving, that's a huge miss. So we still need signings up front, but I think that area is probably the one thing that we're in most need of. Just a bit more composure, a bit more quality in front of goal. So we'll have to see who we bring in really to replace Cardwell and to strengthen that area. But that's probably the biggest weakness, I'd say. Yeah.
Well, I think this is I uploaded a podcast with Andy Leader from Super the other day, but this is actually the first podcast that I've made since all the that dramatic day the other day where Cardwell leaving, obviously the stuff with Kensdale, which we don't know the extent of fully yet, but it looks to be that he's going as well. That came out on the same day, and then you've got two signings coming in. It was a bit of a hectic day, but it's my first time actually making a podcast since then, so I think we should probably speak about it. So starting off with the outgoings, assuming that Kensdale is going, how big of a loss is losing Kensdale and Cardwell? If you could just talk about both of those and how big of a loss do you think they are?
Yeah, I mean, with Kensdale, it's a bit difficult because we don't know what's gone on. We don't know exactly what's happened and what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I'm not really, I don't know. I don't really want to say it's like he's gone yet because I don't know what's happened. But in terms of what he brings to the team, when he's, hopefully if he does stay at the club or whatever, then I was speaking to someone today about him. He's different to all our other defenders because he's so composed, not just on the ball. Because obviously you watch Kensdale playing, he's so good on the ball. Like he's just really, really comfortable. But defensively, he's calm and composed as well. And I think if you're playing in the middle of the back three, you need someone like that. Yep. Whereas if you look at someone like Harry Taylor, who's been like unbelievable this last year or so.
Yeah, he's been brilliant.
He's so like aggressive when he goes in like side tackles and stuff. He couldn't play in the middle of the back three because he's too aggressive. But on the outside, you want someone who's aggressive like him, and that is amazing. But in the middle, you want a different type of player. Now Kensdale's the perfect player for the middle. He's probably not the strongest. And that's probably the one thing that really lets him down. I think if he was stronger, maybe a bit better in the air, he'd be like a top League 2 player. But his composure and just like calmness on the ball, it's just something we don't have like in the rest of the squad. So like we've seen 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗶𝗺𝗺𝗏 play in the middle of the back three, and he's a good player and he can cover that well. But I don't think he's a perfect player to play in the middle. I think he's probably a bit better suited to the right. So, like I say, we don't know what's happened with Kensdale. We don't know if he's going to leave, but if he did leave for whatever reason, I think we need someone else very similar to him who's that sort of calm and composed central defender. But I think he's a top player, and some people maybe don't rate him as highly as they should do. I think with Cardwell, I think he's the best striker in the league. I think the most complete striker in terms of everything he brings to us. Like obviously, you want your striker to score goals, right? And he scored a lot last year, but he's a proper target man. Like he's tall, strong, really quick. He works hard off the ball. Like when we want to be aggressive and we want to like press high up the pitch, he does that really well. There's things like we want to try and play out from defence, but sometimes if we can't and we have to go long, Cardwell's a good target man, but he can also run in behind defences. So he's like the complete striker, really, and I think that's a huge, huge loss. Obviously, we had no choice. But I think there was a release clause, so he's had to go. Yep. It's a shame, but I think as a profile, as what he actually does, I don't think there's anyone better in the league in terms of he can do a bit of everything, So, like I said, we're going to have to replace him, and hopefully we get someone obviously as good in terms of scoring goals, but also like as a profile, what he actually brings to the team. We need someone quite diverse like him who can do a lot of different things. So yeah, definitely. I think two massive players for us. Yeah.
Well, on Cardwell, obviously, we don't know what's happened with Kensdale, so it's sort of hard to talk about that. But assuming he does leave, if he does leave, then it's definitely a big loss. And you're right, he is different to the others. And I hope he stays, but obviously we don't know what the extent of what's happened or anything really, which is quite surprising. But with Cardwell, I do think it's a big miss. But it's I've seen some people sort of, you're always going to get it when a player leaves, saying, oh, he's greedy or whatever, but on Twitter. But, I don't see it like that at all. And I think it's very different to when a player I don't know, in the Premier League or something leaves to, for an example, like Saudi Arabia, and on a crazy amount of money, because they were already on a crazy amount of money. But when it's Cardwell, obviously I don't know the exact figures, but I've heard somewhere that he's like tripling his wage or something. And at that level, I think it's something you can't say no to. And it's not like he's leaving to go to a team that are worse than us. Forest Green are a team that myself and many others would probably tip to be right up at the top of the table, probably them and Barnet and the likes of Oldham maybe as like the three who are looking to be favourites. I would have said Southend before the start of the season, but we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Now losing Cardwell might not be so optimistic, but yeah. So I don't see it like that at all. And as you said, the release clause, a team comes in, he's got to go, and yeah, at the end of the day, it's one of those things. And I don't have any sort of bad blood for Cardwell at all. I think fair enough. He's making the right choice for his family at the end of the day, and that's what it's about. So, yeah, I don't have any bad blood for Cardwell. He always tried his best, and at the end of the day, also, I think what people forget is when we were really in the struggles. I was going to swear then and realised I was on YouTube. Maybe not, but when we were really in the tough, it was like, I heard League Two clubs were sniffing and constantly looking at him, but he always stuck with us. Times he was getting paid late or whatever, he always stuck with us. And a brilliant servant to the club. And as you said, a great goal tally last season. So, which is quite weird, because I was actually speaking to the Forward fan about Cardwell, and he was saying like, "Oh, I'm surprised he hasn't left." And this was before any rumours happened. And then a few days later he left. So that was great timing. So I've got a bit of a random question actually. I don't know if do you keep up much with international football?
A bit. I mean, I watch the England games.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask a bit about the England games. So the Euros, obviously, we got to the final. It's one of the weirdest competitions, I think, because we got to the final, but everyone seemed annoyed. So I sort of wanted to ask, what do you think England's, I don't know how much you can talk about this, but what do you think our sort of issues were at the Euros, and what sort of could we have done differently, do you think, just as an England fan perspective?
I think it's so difficult with England, because you look at the last, I don't know how many years Southgate was in charge, but we had a good record. Like, we were a good team on paper. Like, results wise, you can't really argue. Okay, we didn't quite win the trophy, and that was probably the only thing lacking, but we was consistently getting to the latter stages in tournaments, which we haven't really had for as long as I can remember, certainly.
Yeah.
So you can't really argue the results, but obviously it wasn't exciting to watch. It was never exciting to watch, but
no.
The thing that I struggled with was, I think there was a bit too much reliance on a bit of luck and a bit of individual quality. You need a bit of luck, obviously. You need to rely a bit on that, but there was too much reliance on it. And I think tactically, we weren't as good as the other top teams. And I think that was it's a difficult one, because like, we lost on penalties a couple of times. Like, we were very close to winning the tournament with Southgate and with his tactics. So it almost worked. But I think it was just, if it was going to happen, there would have been a bit too much reliance on a bit of luck, And I think that's probably the one thing that's got to change. You need the tactics needs to be stronger. Like, the structure needs to be stronger to allow us to get to that position where we can be competing, rather than just being all right and relying on world-class players to get us through. There's certain things, like when we were off the ball, I think we were too passive. We would let the other team have the ball too much. It would mean we'd sit back quite a lot and then have to soak up too much pressure. And it's just, it's not. You can still win games like that. You can still win tournaments, but it's not sustainable to do that. So I think tactically we were lacking. You need a bit of luck. Everyone needs a bit of luck, and everyone needs to rely a bit on their good players. But I think it was just a bit too much for me, and not enough not enough reliance on strong tactics. So I think that's probably got to change when a new guy comes in. But at the same time, it was pretty good and it worked. It almost works perfectly. So it's a difficult one to balance, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely. And to be honest, I probably have quite a weird view on England and Southgate and stuff, because I don't know. I wasn't necessarily that anti-Southgate, to be honest, because I think it's different to club football, right? Like, I'm not the biggest international fan of football. Obviously, I keep up with England during the Euros and World Cup. I'm bound to, but I'm definitely more of a club man myself. And I don't think I've really ever been to an England game, but I've been to countless Southend games. So I definitely am more of a club man myself. But I thought it's different. I think club football and international football are very different in the sense that personally, I don't care as much. Like at club level, I think, being exciting and a team that you actually really want to watch is almost just as important, if not more important, than results. There obviously is a balance between the two, but I think being entertaining is more important at a club level, because you're playing like a 40 game season, or however many games in our case, like 46 game season, and it matters a lot. But when it's England and it's a tournament, at the end of the day, I think the goal is to get to the final or win, and he did that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But obviously, I'm a bit biased because I was working for most of the England games, so I didn't get to see many of them. So maybe if I was an England fan who actually got to watch a lot of the games, maybe I would have the same the same sort of outlook as everyone else. So
no, it's a difficult one, because, like you say, like he did a good job. He did do a good job objectively. You can't really argue with the results. So it's a results business at the end of the day. Everyone wants it to be exciting, but if it's exciting but you're losing in the groups, or it's boring but you're winning it, then I'd rather be boring. But
yeah,
it's not about being boring. But for me, it's more about giving us the best chance to win it. And I think, like I said, I think there was just a bit too much reliance on our top players. Like I think one of the games, like Bellingham scored an overhead kick in the last minute, and you're like, he's a world-class player, and if he didn't do that, then we would have lost in one of the early rounds. So, and we weren't very good that match either. So it's just things like that. But it's a difficult one, like we say, because he did a good job, but not quite.
Yeah, and it's about who replaces him now as well, because I don't really know who. I don't really see who could, to be honest, and they haven't found a replacement yet. Really, I think one of the sort of youth or whatever coach is coaching England at the moment, but there's not.
Yeah, Lee Carsley's there, isn't he? Is in the interim.
Yeah.
So he was the under-21s manager, but he did a very good job there. So it'll be interesting to see how he does, really, like how we look, if he changes anything tactically or anything. I don't know if the plan is to have him whilst they look for someone else, or if it's going to be almost a trial for him for the next few months. I don't know what the plan is, but it's an interesting one, like to see if he can replicate what he did in the 21s in the senior team. But if not, I mean, there's no rush. I think they'll get the right person in. There's a couple of years to the next tournament, so you can probably do it in this season. By the end of the season, get someone in properly and have a year to have a full year to have a crack at it. But no, it'd be interesting to see how the next few games go.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer, Joe, but there's a few more things I want to talk about. So firstly, if we could talk about National League as a whole, because obviously you mentioned that on your page, you don't just talk about Southend. And I like to sort of, although this is a Southend podcast, I like to sort of open it up to other like fans of other teams and things, because I talk enough about Southend as it is. So talking about National League can always be a bit of fun. So what teams in the league excite you the most, whether it's style of play or just how good they are? Which teams excite you the most?
I think for me, Gateshead are the best team in the league. I think tactically they're good. I think they play good football. They score goals. when I saw like pre-season predictions, people had them like outside the playoffs, like mid-table.
Yeah.
And I mean, that it's still early. Like we'll see. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll fade away. But I put them second in my predictions, and I think they're top in a minute as we record this. So I think they're going to be right up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're just the best team to watch. I think I enjoy. Obviously, I'm a Southend fan. I enjoy watching us. But if there's another team, I enjoy watching Gateshead the most. I think Barnet will be up there. I think they come second last year, but they signed a load of players, so you never know how it's going to go. But got a good manager, good style of play, good players. So I think they'll be there. Rochdale, another one who I saw him play a few times last year. And in pre-season, I basically said that if these sign good players, they're going to be up there. Because they got a good manager, and the way they play football, I think, allows them to control games, basically. That's what you want. If you're controlling games every week, more or less, then like you're going to be up there. If you've got the right players, if you've got good players and good tactics and stuff, and you're going to be up there. So I think Rochdale are one who I think they probably lack the biggest squad, similar to Southend, but I think they can be good, and York as well. Like the first game, I was really impressed with them when they played us, and then every game I've watched of theirs since, they've been good. They've signed some good players as well, and yeah, for me, it's all about controlling games. I think that the teams that I find who are the best are the ones who have not just about having possession, but if you've got possession and you control games, and you've got good players, quality in the final third. Then you're not going to go far wrong. So I think those teams that I've mentioned really all fit into that description. So I think they'll all be up there, really. There's certain teams like Eastleigh have had a good start, but I'm not really sure. I haven't really seen them play this season yet, so I'm not really sure about them if they're going to do it. I think Southend can be up there, but we just need to sort out a few more transfers, really. But it's a
I'm glad
you
said about Gateshead. I'm glad you said about Gateshead, because I was the same as you. I was really surprised when I saw people putting them in like mid-table, and I was like, really, I think I agree with you. I think they're right up there, and I think in my predictions I had them sort of third or fourth around there. Because I mean, the only thing that held me back from putting maybe a bit higher is obviously what happened last season with not being allowed to go into the playoffs because of, was it something to do with their stadium or health and safety or something? So that can always have an effect on players, but it could go either way. It could be like there's no point in trying because we're not going to be able to get promoted. I don't know if they'll be able to sort it by the end of the season, but it seemed like more of a long-term thing that needs to sort. Or it could go the other way, and it's like sort of what happened with Southend, sort of this siege mentality where it's like everything's going against us, so why not just play and no pressure, that sort of thing.
Right, exactly,
I definitely agree with you on Gateshead, and I'm glad you said that because whenever I've spoken to people, nobody mentions Gateshead, and it does surprise me because I think they're one of the best teams in the league. And I think their ground is sort of hard to play at because it's a weird ground, and obviously it's so up north, it's crazy. And it's like, when they play, other than the anomalies in Southend and other fan bases, they're not going to have too many away fans there. And also it's a weird stadium being so far from the pitch. So I think that sort of plays into their favour because they can have their own fans there and not many away. So I think tough teams to play, and I definitely agree on Gateshead.
No, it's a weird one, isn't it? It's a weird stadium because you're so far away, and like it's probably not the best atmosphere there. But if they're playing there every other week and they're used to it, like you say, then it's probably going to be an advantage to them. No, I think they're top, mate. I think they're a good team.
Definitely, yeah.
I don't think they'll be outside the top three, but maybe they don't have the biggest squad. So maybe if they get a load of injuries, they'll fade away a bit. But no, I think they're a good team, to be fair.
So I've got a tough one. So I think I told you about it a little bit before, but I've come up with some. So the idea is, I'm going to basically ask you to build your dream National League player using one of each of these categories. And obviously, I've come up with rough categories. If you want to come up with some yourself, or just take out some, because some might be a little bit tricky. But I thought it'd be a fun one to ask. And we're nearing the end. I've got a few questions that some Southend fans sent in, but this is sort of one of the last bits I want to talk about. So the categories I've got for you to build your dream National League player. So we've got left foot, right foot, strength, technique, finishing, and defending. So just sort of like an all-round midfielder, maybe something like that. So if you want to just go category by category, if you want to add in one yourself, then feel free. But so sort of come up with a player for each.
So pick one player for each category.
Pick one player for each, yeah. So so
okay.
pick a player for strength, pick a player for technique, that sort of thing.
So what? So a left-footed player and a right-footed player you want first? Is that? Or
if that's possible, do you think you could do
that? Well, so we go. Should we just say centre midfield? Should we just?
Yeah. So it's like a centre midfielder. We're coming up with the best player if he can do everything, and it's a National League player. So just one player for each category.
Left foot. I like. Sorry, what are the categories again? Sorry.
We'll go one by one. So left foot first.
I like Ryan East at Rochdale. He's left-footed centre midfielder, good player. Yeah, I like him a lot.
Okay, nice. Right foot.
I'm going to say 𝗦𝗧𝗔𝗧𝗦. I love 𝗦.
Nice.
I think he's a top player.
Okay, yeah. Nice, good shout. But when we get to like defending and finishing stuff, you can choose strikers if you want. You could just choose anyone you want, really, in any position. Just the player we're building is a centre mid. So just for the fun of the game, Joe. So strength next. Strength.
God, who's the strongest player?
Not Kensdale, based off what you said earlier.
Not Kensdale. I don't know who the strongest player is. I think when we played York first game, I'll tell you what about the 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗏𝗺 striker? I don't know how you pronounce it. Is it 𝗦𝗧𝗔𝗧𝗦? Something like
right,
that.
Yeah.
Big number 9 target man. Yeah. He's really tall, pretty strong. Yeah, I reckon he's got to be up there. Strongest players. Yeah, nice. Go with him.
So next, technique. There's quite a few Southend players you could choose for that, I reckon. But are you going to be biased or not?
I think I rushed into saying 𝗦 earlier. I should have said 𝗦 for this one. I don't know. If I can't think of anyone else, we'll go with 𝗦. But I don't know. What Gateshead players are there? I'm going to say Regan Booty at Gateshead. He's a centre mid, but he's really good on the ball, like good passing. Yeah, I'm going to say him. Technique.
Nice. We'll move on to finishing.
𝗵𝗵𝗏𝗺𝗽𝗏𝗺.
Yep. You can't say anything else, can you, really? The stats talk for themselves. You're a man of stats, so you're not going to go for anyone other than 𝗵𝗵𝗏𝗺. Of course. So, obviously, it'd be hard to argue against 𝗵𝗵𝗏𝗺, I think. Yeah. Even if you hate Eastleigh or something, it'd be hard to argue against him. I mean, how many goals did he score last season? Like, nearing 40, was it? Like 35 or something?
It was over 30 in the league, and he might have scored a few in the cups as well. So
yeah,
it's probably pushing 35, isn't it? Yeah.
I think one of the most impressive things about that as well was that he wasn't it like he scored no penalties in that. Or maybe I'm making that up, but
no,
I don't think he scored any penalties in that. Which was maybe I might be mixing him up with someone, but I think it was him that didn't score any penalties in that 35.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. If he did, he didn't score many.
No,
he might have scored 1 or 2, but. No, I'm pretty sure he didn't score a single one. I know that
crazy.
when Langstaff, when Notts County was in National League, I think he didn't score any pens. Langstaff, he scored about 40 goals. Yeah. I think none of them were pens. But no, I think McAdam's the same, to be fair. I think all of them were non-penalty.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. So to round off this slightly weird segment, but hopefully slightly interesting segment as well, because you've spoken about some players that I'm sure a lot of people probably have heard of, some people haven't heard of. So lastly, if you could round off on defending.
I'm just going to go with Harry Taylor.
You got to go with him.
Got to go with him.
Yeah.
Big slide, love a slide tackle, Taylor. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And how good was he the other day against Dagenham? I mean, he was just unplayable that game. Really incredible player. And thank God we have him, because with the defence, I was going to say crisis. I mean, let's see what happens with Kensdale, but it's getting a bit shaky.
Bit short, in it.
Yeah. So we definitely need to bring in a few players. So I'll move on to fan questions in a second, but actually one question I wanted to ask before that is before the season you made quite a brilliant blog. I'll leave the link to it down below, where you sort of looked into depth at the positions that Southend needed, and sort of looked at different options for each position. So if you could I made this post the other day and I sort of suggested 4 players in positions that we need that Southend should sign. Obviously, I'm not as qualified as you on this, so I'll leave it to you.
I'm not qualified, mate. Don't worry.
Well, qualify within the Southend space anyway. So, what players do you think, if you could make 4 signings for Southend, what signings would you make, and in what positions?
So the positions, I think. So let's think. So now Cardwell's left, we probably need at least one more striker, definitely. But I think we've got a couple injuries, so potentially one permanent and one on loan, maybe. I don't know. Yep. It's so difficult with names, because when I wrote that, there was in the summer, and obviously a lot of those players have gone. Some of them are still available, so people for the strikers, like some of the ones on my list who are still available, bearing in mind I wrote this about 2 or 3 months ago. You've got 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗺𝗺, I don't think has signed anywhere. He's a striker, he seems to be like a target man, sort of. So he could be an option. Yep. People like obviously 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗺𝗺𝗺, but he's at Eastleigh and he might be a bit expensive. 𝗦𝗧𝗔𝗧𝗦, he's at Wealdstone. I think he's injured actually, so probably not a good shout. I can't think who else was on my list.
But you said about
Sam. I think Sam. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I heard apparently one of the reasons, because I agree with you. I think he should be probably one of our main targets, because just how good he is. But then you think, why have no other clubs come in for him? Because he was so good, and I've heard apparently his wages are really high. But then you think, maybe now that we've freed up some wages with Cardwell, we also got a fee for him. I believe it was, I've heard, in the region of over 100 grand. I don't know how true that is, but that's what I've heard. So, maybe we could bring him in, but it's also a case of the fee as well, because he's got quite a few years on his contracts left, I think. So we'll have to
you never know. With obviously, he's their best player, so they're not going to let him go on the cheap. And no. I don't know what he's on every week, but he's going to be expensive, so it's probably not a realistic one. But you never know.
We like to dream.
Sorry,
we like to dream.
Yeah, I think Sam Dalby was on my list, but only because obviously everyone knows him anyway. But now Wrexham have gone up to League One. I don't know how much he's going to play, so it could potentially be a loan option, but I don't know.
He was in my when I did my post recently about who to sign. He was one of the players I mentioned. Actually, I think I chose Sam Dalby, 𝗦𝗵𝗿𝗺𝗺𝗺𝗺, and then a few niche ones to show I know a bit, which I don't. But I went with I can't remember his first name now, but Kiernan, who is he played for Cardiff. He's 31 now, but he played for Cardiff. I think a few years ago he played for Hartlepool. He didn't do very well at Hartlepool, so maybe not the best shout. But there was a list recently of players who played in this free agents game. So I just went down that list and saw, which ones maybe would suit Southend. And I think, I don't know if you'd agree, but I think one of Southend's biggest issues is that, you look at our midfield, it's real quality in our midfield, but it's I think it's a case of, they're all too similar and they're all got the same sort of stature, the same sort of playing style. And I don't know, I thought maybe him, because he's a bit of experience as well, because we've got quite a young side, which I think is a good thing, but we can do with a bit of experience. But yeah, I chucked him in, and a defender from Tamworth who I sort of done quite well. But yeah, so I chucked in Sam Dalby and Paul McCullum. So I thought I'd get 2 right and a few niche ones to pretend I know some stuff. So I think we'll move on to the questions. So before, like about an hour before we started the podcast, I asked people to send in some questions. We've got about 5, so don't have to spend too long on it, because I don't want to keep you too long. I've already kept you a bit longer than I thought. But so I've got about 5 questions here. So if you could just give a bit of insight onto each one. So firstly, we've got, who do you think the club should be pursuing now, knowing a lot of his recommendations have gone? So we've just spoken about it, actually. So a lot of your recommendations from that blog that I mentioned have gone. But yeah, who do you think? I guess you just answered it, but anybody else that you think?
Yeah, I haven't really come up with any new names, to be honest, just because I haven't really had the time, to be honest. Now the season started, I've been focusing more on match analysis, so I haven't really looked. Potentially we'll look at a few players in the next week or so, potentially have a look at some, but I'm not really sure, to be honest. There's still some players on my list who are available or who are still at their clubs, but I haven't gone anywhere this season. So certain different positions, not just strikers, certain other positions. But to be boring, I'm not really sure, to be honest. Maybe just keep an eye on my Twitter page, and there might be some names thrown about on there soon.
Well, I'll leave the link to I said I'll leave you a link to your blog, and because I believe you do a blog as well as your Twitter page, is that right? So I'll leave a link to that, and I'll also leave a link to your Twitter down below. So the second question I have from people who sent it in is, how are you feeling about, again, one that we've sort of answered, but you could always answer it again. But how are you feeling about the current situations of players leaving, getting injured and joining, and how do you think this will affect the club in the next following weeks?
Yeah, I think we've already spoken about that, really. We've already spoken about Cardwell. Like, it'll be a big loss, so we need to replace him. The 2 new lads we brought in last week, I haven't had any time to look into like what types of players they are, so that'll probably be the next thing I'll do. So if people follow me on Twitter, then that'll probably come before the Oldham match. Before the Oldham match, I'll probably write a few of my thoughts there. In the next few weeks, I think it's going to be a tough next few weeks, to be honest. I think some of the games we've got coming up are hard. We've got injuries. We don't have the biggest squads anyway. I think we just need to get a few players in, really. We just need to get a few players in, but they need to be the right ones. You don't want to just rush it. I know it is. You need to be. You can look at it and say, "Oh, we desperately need 2 or 3 players," but I'd rather wait another 2 weeks and get the right player than get someone in now who's no good and it's just going to be a waste of money or whatever. So but there is obviously urgency as well, so it's a balance between the two. But the next few weeks I'm not really sure. We've got a good squad, like the players we've got are good, but clearly we need a few more. So I guess we'll have to just see who they've got lined up. Hopefully they get 1 or 2 in soon.
Hopefully, but I think the fact that we're in National League and we don't really have like a window as such compared to EFL clubs and Premier League, we don't really have a window. I think that will really play into our favour because as you said, signings are quite urgent. We definitely need bodies in and quick. But I think as you said again, you don't want to rush. You don't want to rush anything and make sure we do the right recruitment, because the last thing we want is if it's personality, you don't want somebody coming in and just messing up the really good dressing room that clearly 𝗏𝗺𝗺 has quite under control. Obviously, I don't know what happened with Kensdale, but it seems like a real hard-working group of lads, and you don't want somebody to come in and mess that up. And equally, you don't want to sign somebody for a lot of money who won't suit us or won't suit our style and won't play well. So moving on to question 3. Given our current squad and injuries, what starting 11 and formation would be best?
Yeah, I see this one a lot, to be honest. I think the formation has to stay the same. It has to stay the same because we don't have, well, first of all, because it's so well drilled into all the players. We've been playing it for like a couple of seasons or whatever it is. Everyone knows their jobs. Everyone knows what they're doing. Like, you shouldn't really be changing it just because we had a bit of a shaky start. But also, we don't have any, other than Bridge, we don't have any wingers. Like, the only player we've got who can play on the right wing is Jack Wood. And he hasn't really, in my opinion, proven himself to be starting ahead of all the other sort of midfielders we've got. I think he can be, I like him, he's a good player. But at the minute, I see him as an impact player. I don't see him as someone who you can rely to start every single week, play 90 minutes, like week in, week out. And if he's not doing that, then we've got no one else who can play on the right wing. So you can't play wingers, really. So that basically leaves the formation we've got at the minute, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think the formation isn't the issue. It's not. You don't win or lose games because of the formation. In terms of the starting 11 within that formation, it's not really a lot you can change, to be honest. It's not really a lot because you've got a couple injuries up front. Walker, Waldron, Cardwell's left, so we don't really have many strikers. You wouldn't really drop Bridge, Gus, Colin, Taylor, Ralph, Cav. Most of them are there. Like, you know what I mean? You're not going to change too much.
No.
I think in the defence, it's looking like Crowther's going to be in the middle of that 3. I don't know what's going to happen with Kensdale, and I don't know if maybe we'll get someone else at some point. I don't know. The only, other than up front, where we don't have many options, the only position is probably one of the number 8s in midfield, who is the other side of Cav. So you have Cav in the middle, probably Noor, and then it's like, who's the other one? So that could be 𝗦𝗪𝗏𝗺, could be Morton, could be Coker, could be any of them 3 really. I think it just depends on who you play. I think it depends on the opposition. So some games it will suit to have 𝗦𝗪𝗏𝗺 from the start. Some games it won't, and it will suit to bring him on the last half hour maybe.
Yeah. And
I see a lot of things where people say that Morton and 𝗦𝗪𝗏𝗺 can't play together. I disagree with that because I think even though I get that Morton's not a creative midfielder, but it doesn't mean that you can't have him in the team. Like, just because some games you need someone, like last season where we had Fonguk, we had Wes, and he was like not a 10, but he was like an attacking box-to-box sort of midfielder. Some games you need him or someone like him, and some games you need someone who can just keep the ball, pass the ball, like Morton. Just keep the ball, pass it, pin the other team back, and that allows us to play higher up the pitch. It allows Bridge to be where he wants to be, which is high up, because if you lose the ball more, like what we were saying earlier about if we attack too much or attack too quickly, and maybe we lose the ball more, and that means Bridge has got to defend in the back 5, and it doesn't really suit him, does it? So in order to get the best out of Bridge and people like that, you need to keep the ball. So there's certain games where it will suit having Morton and 𝗦𝗪𝗏𝗺𝗺, and other games where it won't. You need someone like 𝗦𝗪𝗏𝗺𝗺. So it's just a difficult question really, because it just depends on the opposition and on the game state as well, like whether we're winning or losing, what it is. Sometimes you need different players. So but there's not really a lot Kev can change, to be honest, until we get a few of the injured lads back, get a couple more signings. There's not really a lot you can do, really. But no. I wouldn't be changing formation, no.
Well, another question that got sent in is, what made you want to become interested in stats and analysis? But obviously we've spoken about that already, so I won't ask that again. So the last question is, statistically, I think it's quite an interesting one actually. And one of my favourite questions I got sent is, I think it's quite an interesting one. So this will be you'll be happy to know this will be the last thing that I'll ask today. So statistically, how did last season compare to our first season in the National League?
Yeah, well, it's impossible for me to answer with stats because I've only just heard the question. But I think that was first season in National League, was that the first one?
Yeah. So last season compared to the first season.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to have a look really. I think that the first season was when Kev joined in October, so we probably had the first half of the season was a bit iffy, and then the second half, I think that's when he started to sign players like Cardwell, 𝗵𝗺𝗺𝗪𝗺, Kensdale, a few players on loan, where we started to. He formed his own team, if you like. Kev really started to build his own team. So that first season was probably a bit of a write-off, really. But the second season, which was Kev's first full one, which I don't know if that's what the person meant. So those 2 seasons, I think there wouldn't be a lot of difference defensively because we were strong defensively both seasons. I think that we were probably a bit more clinical in front of goal last year, but still not enough. Still not enough, in my opinion, to be, challenging at the top. I'd say we were probably. It's difficult, because I haven't obviously looked at the numbers yet, but I'd say we were probably a bit better in front of goal last year, creatively and in terms of finishing. But yeah, finishing was still lacking in both seasons, I think. So that's, like I said earlier, that's the thing we need to improve on, really, to take us from a playoff team thereabouts to one that can try and win it at some point, or get top 3 or whatever. But no, that's an interesting one. Maybe I'll have a look at that in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I think that'll be everything for today. I've kept you a lot longer than either of us expected, but I've really enjoyed speaking to you. And I try not to go over, but not normally I probably do, because I think with Southend as well, there's just so much to talk about. It's like trying to cram it into an episode is always tricky, and it's like we get talking and it's like, oh, what do you think about this? And then suddenly you look at the time and you're like, oh god. But I've really enjoyed you. Obviously having you on. I really appreciate you coming on and giving your time. So I'll leave all your details. If you send me a link to those, I know the links to them, but I'll put them all in the description below. So anything you want to say before I end it?
No, just thanks for having me, really, and enjoyed speaking to you today. And anytime, I'll be back anytime.
Well, nice, perfect. I'm sure I'll have you back on one day for another one, because I've really enjoyed this. And maybe we could have a little catch up about how Southend are doing in the next month or 2 months or so. Perfect.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for coming on, Joe. And if anyone did enjoy, please make sure to like and subscribe, and obviously follow Joe on Twitter and his blog. So I'll see you all in the next one.